Hi everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all well. Um, I've got a bit of a crazy idea. Seeing as I'm well over 100 subscribers, in fact over 150 subscribers now, and also seeing as I'm getting close to my 100th video, give or take a few, 20 or so, and as well as that, I'm getting close to my 9,000th video view, which I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but I think it's pretty amazing that with the videos I've done that they've been viewed 9,000 times at least. I mean, that's quite staggering. When I first started doing this, I thought anybody would actually want to watch my videos, but there you go. Yeah, seeing as it's getting to be a bit of a big occasion for me. It's with the subscribers and the videos I'm making. I've decided to do a well. I'm starting to think it's a bit of a crazy thing now. Actually, I'm going to do a set of videos which I'm going to call 31 Days in August, and in that set of videos I'm going to randomly pick from my comic book collection here and here. I'm going to randomly pick one comic or a set of comics, and I'm going to review them, and I'm going to review a random comic or set of comics every day for the month of August. Yeah, now you know why I'm saying it's a bit of a crazy idea. Now, I'm going to review the first comic in a moment. At the end of this video, I'm going to need your help with what I'm doing with this as well. And I'll get into that a bit later on at the end of the video. Right, first comic for the first part of 31 Days in August is Spellbinders number 9. Now, if you've seen my video for the massive amount of comics that I picked up from the shop here called The Works, you'll probably recognise this comic. It's one of the ones that I picked up in that set that I got. So there you go. Yep, pretty cool. This has 2 stories in it. Now it was published by Quality Comics, or Fleetway Quality Comics as they're known. Not to be confused with the Quality Comics that come out around about 1939, 1940s, which was the American comic book company of a sort of similar name. This was published by Fleetway, and it was, I suppose it was Fleetway's way of making, sort of breaking into the American market, which it sort of did fairly successfully. I mean, I don't think Quality Comics are around now anymore. Excuse me, but it was a fairly successful series. There were many other comics other than Spellbinders. You had reprints of Judge Dredd, Sam Slade, Robot Hunter, Slain the Barbarian, Rogue Trooper. There was another one called Time Twisters, which reprinted the usually one-off stories called Time Twisters, which Alan Moore wrote a lot of. Halo Jones, another one that was written by Alan Moore with art by Ian Gibson. Ian Gibson. Hang on a second. Terrible names. Yeah, the Ballad of Halo Jones, which was written by Alan Moore and drawn by Ian Gibson. So yeah, and as well as that, this was the first time that you would have seen a lot of the 2000 AD stories actually printed in colour, because originally in way from the very beginning of 2000 AD to around about early 2000s, the majority of stories in 2000 AD were black and white. They only had 4 pages of colour, which would have been the front page, the front cover and the back cover, and 2 interior pages, usually the centre pages, which mostly was the first 2 pages of a Judge Dredd story. So these were the very first times, in a lot of cases, that you would have seen the 2000 AD stories actually printed in colour. Now, the first story is, I'm sure if you've all read 2000 AD, the first story is Nemesis the Warlock, and that was written by Pat Mills with artwork by Kevin O'Neill. And that ran through 2000 AD. Let's have a look. That ran through 2000 AD from 1980s right up to, well, near enough present day, really. It was about an alien freedom fighter who came to Earth to free humanity, or in the future as they're known, termites, from the oppression of the Grand Master Thomas de Torquemada. Right, put my teeth in. Thomas de Torquemada, who was the emperor of the Earth in the future. If you know anything about Spanish history, and you know about the Spanish Inquisition and the way that they tortured people who weren't Christians, or even who were Christians, and that it's the character Thomas de Torquemada is based on an actual character in history called Thomas de Torquemada, who was a big torturer of people, I suppose, the easiest way to say it. And he tortured, and he had his hands in the torturing and murder of thousands, if not millions, of people for the Spanish Inquisition. Now, we start off with this story, and obviously it's issue 9, so it's not the very first issue with Nemesis the Warlock. This is book 5. This is from book 5 of the Nemesis the Warlock run. I believe there was 10 books altogether, and if you can find them in trade paperback, really go see if you can pick them up, because they were absolutely blinding, as most things are from 2000 actually. And we'll start off. The first page, we have a convention, a Torquemada convention. And in any conventions, you've got comics, magazines, toys, figurines, posters, people dressed up as their favourite character, which at this convention is Thomas de Torquemada. Now, as with a lot of these stories, the people who wrote them liked to put their own ideas across about certain events that were happening around at the time. And in the 1980s, one of the big things was the apartheid in South Africa. There's a character in here called the Arch Bigot, whose job is to find a group of people to vilify and, you know, make evil in the eyes of everybody else in the world, to take away people worrying about what's actually is happening in the world, and to make them concentrate on a group of people that basically, you know, haven't done anything really, but, you know, just to sort of keep their minds occupied rather than actually figuring out what's going on in the world, really. Now, as I said, these a lot of the writers at the time, and even now, they like to put in their own, you know, interject their own ideas in stories and show what's actually happening at that time. And the Arch Bigot is an ancestor of somebody from South Africa. Now, I will read this out because it's got a South African accent, and you'll have to excuse me if you are from South Africa, because my accent is probably not as good as yours, but I will try and read this as best as I can. Now, the Grand Bigot says, Grand Dragon, I've been a bigot all my life. My ancestors in South Africa were bigots. They were bigoted against black people, by the way, and I can tell you, it doesn't matter who you pick on, as long as you're bigger than they are. And there you go, I'm not lying. That's exactly what it says there. There you go. See, I'm not lying there. Now, again, if you want, I shall carry on with the bad South African accent. He goes, that's where Torquemada made his mistake in taking in Nemesis. Now, I considered tall people, left-handed people, and people with beards. But finally, I decided we'd be prejudiced against freckled people. So he decides. There you go, back in focus. Really should talk that autofocus off. He decides that the best group of people to be bigoted against is people with freckles. um, um, they, as they say later on, they are the new deviants. Freckled people are the evil people, and the way they are going to go about this is by adding stories into the news feeds and other media where freckled people have mugged an old lady, freckled people have kicked a dog, freckled people have murdered somebody, until it escalates into a point where everybody around in the whole world are more worried about people who have got freckles than what's actually happening in the real world. Now you can interpret that as much as in any way you want. A lot of people think that that's what's happening around the world nowadays with certain minorities and certain groups of people in the world and that. But yeah, this is what this is how obviously Pat Mills viewed what was happening in places like South Africa with bigots and even around the world in the 1980s, and I suppose it could be true to say today as well. Now, after they've figured out who they're going to be picking on for the foreseeable future, they walk through the convention and they bump into a character that is presumed to be Thomas the Torquemada's grandfather. It isn't actually Torquemada's grandfather, it's his brother, who was horribly disfigured and driven completely insane by his brother. And the reason why they turned around and said that he was his grandfather was because they didn't want to have the furore and the all the media sensationalism about the fact that Thomas de Torquemada's brother was insane. And he was driven insane by Torquemada by being thrown into the time wastes and disfigured by him as well, just basically because Torquemada could. Now he's also Torquemada's brother has also got a fixation with Torquemada's wife, Candida, who she's not a bad looker, and yeah, everybody thinks that Torquemada and Nemesis are dead. They're not. They've been flung into the time zones and time tunnels and are going through space looking for Nemesis' son Thoth, who is trying to destroy the universe. Now I'll show you a picture of Torquemada's brother. And the new Grand Emperor asks Torquemada's brother to help him to see if he can locate Torquemada, because the Grand Emperor is the only one that knows that Torquemada is actually alive. He's just lost in the voids of space and time. Now, we leave the convention and the Earth, and we go to Nemesis and Torquemada's spaceship, because they're both going through time and space to find, like I said, Nemesis' son Thoth, to try and stop him from destroying the universe. Now, there's a character in here which, again, if you have read 2000 AD, you'll probably recognise as a character from another story called ABC Warriors. This is Rojaw from the ABC Warriors, yeah, who was, I suppose you could say, he was Nemesis' like companion or butler or go-between sort of thing. He originally come from another British weekly comic series called Star-Lord, there was a story called Robusters, which is about a group of robots that would do things if there was something dangerous happened, like a nuclear meltdown or a volcano erupted or there was a natural disaster. Instead of sending human beings to go in there and getting hurt, they would send robots in instead. Excuse me. So yes, that's Rojaw's origin. And as with many stories and series from 2000 AD, there was a very, very loose continuity between them. Later on, you would see Strontium Dog, Johnny Alpha Strontium Dog, mixing it up with Judge Dredd or Rogue Trooper being in the Judge Dredd universe. You had ABC Warriors were in the Nemesis the Warlock universe as well. There was also a moment where there was also one story where you actually saw a judge from Mega City 1 being brought into the future by Nemesis' son Thoth, and you know, and nasty just happened to him, sort of thing. So yeah, there was a very, very loose continuity between all of 2000 AD's stories. I don't think they really do much continuity now with their stories unless it's actually in that story's bracket, sort of. So yeah, they're flying through the universe and all time and space, trying to find Nemesis' son, and we find out that Thomas the Talk Commander actually knew that his brother had a massive fixation with his wife Candida, so he implanted a bomb inside Candida's head, so if his brother ever got too amorous or too close to her, the bomb would go off, killing both his brother and Candida, which just shows you what a nice person he was. So yeah, and then there's Rojaw then goes into Nemesis the Warlock's companion, who her name's Purity, goes into her quarters. She's having a shower. They have a chat, and this is where we find out that Nemesis' son Thoth is intent on completely wiping out all humanity from history, because at this time humanity are just a race of warring, bigoted people who are trying to wipe out all life, all alien, all non-human life in the universe. And then that's where we're left with the Grand Dragon in pursuit of Nemesis the Warlock in the time tunnels. There. Yep. And like I said, if you ever get a chance to pick up any of the trade paperbacks of Nemesis the Warlock, really, it is worth doing, because it was one of the best stories that 2000 AD has ever produced. And from one of the best stories that 2000 AD has ever produced to one of the most underrated, I think, stories that 2000 AD ever produced. And it's the second story in this, and it's the first part of the story as well, which is really good. And it's called Fiends of the Eastern Front. Now, it is a story. It was written by Jerry Finley Day with artwork by Carlos Esquire. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm terrible at pronouncing names like that. Now, Carlos Esquire's work, you would probably know him better for things like when DC had the imprint, the science fiction imprint called DC Helix. He did the artwork for Bloody Mary, the 2 miniseries of Bloody Mary. He also did, I believe he also did the artwork for a character from a comic company called Black Ball, which was written by Garth Ennis, called Just a Pilgrim. Yeah, he's probably in the UK, for comic book fans and that, he's probably more famously known as the artist who first drew Strontium Dogs in Star-Lord, and then later on in 2000 AD. And in this one, I think this is really some of his best work, really, on this story, Fiends of the Eastern Front. It starts off in 1980s. What was it? West Berlin. Yeah, the British sector of West Berlin, where they're doing an excavation of some tunnels and that, and they find the skeleton of a German Second World War soldier. He's got clasping a book in his hand, and behind him are shadows, or these sort of shapes of people drawn into the wall. They have no idea what's going on, so they pick up his diary, and they start reading the diary from the beginning, they find out that the soldier's name is Hans Schmidt, which is a typical German name, I suppose, especially for the Second World War. And it goes through his story from 1940, was it? 1941, and the Nazis advance on Russia. Now, it starts off just normally him talking about the fact that he went to a cinema to see Frankenstein, the movie Frankenstein, with his friend, and then it goes on to them actually being in the trenches in in the Eastern Front of the Russian side of the Russian part of the Second World War. Hans Schmidt gets stuck on some barbed wire in the middle of no man's land, completely unable to move. He is just about to get shot by the Russian army when, from out of nowhere, a group of shadows just appears and completely decimates the Russian squad of soldiers. Once the screaming and all the mayhem and the firing of guns and that stops and everything falls silent, he notices that the dark shapes are starting to come towards him, and as they get closer and closer, they turn out to be Romanian soldiers. They free him from the barbed wire, they help him up, and they help him on his way, and they say to him, "You don't have to worry, we're here to help. We're on your side, and we will help you as much as we can." So daytime comes up. He goes back to camp, and he notices certain things are very strange about these Romanian soldiers. One of their trucks go past, and he looks in the back of it, and it's full of coffins. The guy who's driving the van goes absolutely berserk at him, tells him to leave him alone, don't go anywhere near him, he's got nothing to do with this, and he should leave it alone. The story goes on as they're moving on further into Russian territory, and they come across a group of Cossacks, who are again Russian soldiers, but they're the higher echelon of the Russian soldiers. And these Cossacks come in, start attacking the German soldiers, and all of a sudden the horses that the Cossacks are riding on start to neigh and buck and bolt and run off, leaving a lot of the Cossacks on the floor, where the Germans end up shooting them and killing them there and then. And they're all happy about the fact that all these Cossacks got scared. They think that they're scared because they were scared of the Nazi soldiers. Hans Schmidt thinks that it's very strange that the Cossacks didn't actually run away. It was the horses that were spooked. It wasn't when the horses saw the Nazi soldiers. It was when the horses come close to the coffins that were in the truck that was driven by the Romanian soldier. So as they go on, they get further into Russian territory. They get more and more closer to the Russian army bases and army camps, and they get attacked by a load of Russian tank commanders. Now this happens at night time, and as this happens, and the tanks are firing at the Nazi soldiers, the Romanian soldiers all of a sudden appear from out of nowhere and attack the Russian tanks. Now these Romanian soldiers, to Hans Schmidt's eyes, start turning into mist and going into the tanks, where you hear the Russian soldiers screaming and shouting and that, in Russian as they're being murdered inside their own vehicles. The commander of the Romanian soldiers turns around to the Germans and says, "We killed them. You don't have to worry about them anymore. They're dead. We killed them with their own swords." When Hans Schmidt looks into the Russian tanks, he notices that the wounds on the bodies of the Russian soldiers don't really look like saber marks and that. It looks more like they were ripped to death by teeth, sharp teeth and claws. As it goes on, you'll find that one of the Romanian soldiers gets shot square in the face by a sniper bullet, and then a few moments later gets up as if nothing's happened. The rest of the Nazi soldiers just play it off as, obviously his helmet just got grazed by the sniper shot. These Russians aren't that good at shooting, obviously, and by the by, these Romanians are here to help. The character Hans Schmidt, on the other hand, is more inclined to say, well, hang on a minute, actually I did see him getting shot in the face, right between the eyes, by this sniper bullet, and now he's getting up without a scratch on him. So as the story goes on, the character of Hans Schmidt develops this quite rightly wariness of the Romanian soldiers, until finally in the end they get to an area. It says here that there are thousands of miles further north from their original starting point, and it's all covered in snow and ice and everything. And Hans Schmidt, he sees the Nazi soldiers, and they're walking, and over the ice their reflection is being shown up in the ice. When the Romanian soldiers come along, there's no reflection for them. At which point Hans Schmidt realises that they're vampires. The Romanian soldiers are vampires. It's at that point that the Romanian commander turns around to him and says, "You don't have to worry about us. You've got no problem with us. We're your allies. We're going to help you." But still, Hans Schmidt is very wary of him. And yeah, that's really where we're left off. We're left with that. He also sees them getting turned into. He also sees them turn into wolves and rip apart more Russian soldiers and that. But themes of the Western Front, you hear a few people talking about it, but I think it is one of the most underrated 2000 AD stories that have been about. As well as that, it's really really unique in the fact that it comes from the perspective of a German soldier, a Nazi soldier. Most stories that were published in the UK, usually in the weekly comics, usually Warlord, Battle, I'm trying to think what other ones there were. There were loads of war story comics now. Usually the stories are from the perspective of British soldiers, American soldiers, Russian soldiers, Australian soldiers, people from the Allied forces. This one is completely from the perspective of a Nazi soldier. Now, whether you know, like I said, it's very rare that you would get a story, a Second World War story from the UK, where you actually take the perspective of somebody from the Nazi side. And again, I think this is Esquires is some of his best artwork he's ever done. I mean, there you go. That's the Cossacks attacking on their horses, and the horses coming up to the coffins of the Romanian soldiers now. Yeah, I mean, these are little gold mines. If you've never read 2000 AD, really, seriously, think about seeing if you can pick some of these up really cheaply, because they they do go for quite cheap. I don't know why, but I've seen them on eBay for, you know, you get a bundle of about like 10 of them for £3, you know. So yeah, this is really good. And if you can find, I believe Fiends of the Eastern Front has finally been brought out in trade paperback. If you can find it anywhere, pick it up. If you like war stories, if you like vampire or horror stories, that is definitely worth picking up. Fiends of the Eastern Front by Pat Mills. Not Pat Mills, I'm sorry. By sorry about that. I've got the name here. By Jerry Finley Day and Carter Suarez, and also Nemesis the Warlock by Pat Mills and, I'm terrible with names, and Kevin O'Neill. So yeah, there you go. That was my first chapter, first part of 31 Days in August. I think I managed to fumble my way through that pretty well. Now, if you remember way back at the beginning of this video, because this is going on for nearly half an hour now, I said that I needed your help. Right, now from Monday to Thursday, I will be randomly picking a comic or set of comics or graphic novel to review on this channel. Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to throw it over to you. Now, what I want you to do is, if you're viewing this video, yeah, down in the comment section, I need you to give me 2 numbers. Right, the first number is between 1 and 51. Right, now that corresponds to my comic boxes there. Most of these comic boxes are numbered up, right, from 1 to 51. Yeah. So that first number will correspond to whatever comic box I go to. Yeah. The second number will be from 1 to 300. Okay. Now that will correspond to whatever comic I go to in those comic boxes. So if you say, somebody says number 27 and somebody says number 175, I will go to box 27, count from the back 175 comics to the front, and pick out the 175th comic, and I will review that comic on Saturday, and then I will pick another 2 numbers from whoever puts comment section on the comment section down below, and I will review that comic. Okay, how's that sound? Does that sound okay? Alright, so what I want from everybody is 2 numbers, one from 1 to 51 and one from 1 to 300. Okay, I think that's right. I'm getting confused myself now, so if you're not quite sure, just put in the comment section and I'll let you know what I want from you. Yeah, so there you go, that's the first one. Only another 30 to go. Hopefully you won't get bored and sick of the sight of me by the time I finish this, and hopefully they will be a bit better than this because I've literally thought of this now, and I thought, if I do it now, it's done, and it'd be great. Man. So yeah, thanks for watching. As always, comment in the comment section. Thank you all for subscribing. If you like this, thumbs it up. If you don't like it, thumbs it down. Say why you thumbs it down. And I hope you all participate in this craziness that I'm trying to endeavour to do for the whole of August. So thanks for watching. Take care. Hope to see you soon. Ta-ta for now.